this is, I think, our last Lived It Lecture panel. And we have 3 entrepreneurs tonight that are going to be sharing some really interesting experiences about their endeavors in entrepreneurship, in innovation, as it relates specifically to the healthcare life sciences field. It's an industry that has obviously a very different perspectives. You know, as you're listening to their answers to some of the questions, think about how it might apply to your business, even though many of you, I think, have a business or a startup that really has nothing specifically to do to healthcare, but you can take a lot of learnings related from this industry and apply them to your own. Following the typical format, I have questions, and unlike previous times, I haven't shared any questions legitimately with them, so they have no idea what I'm going to ask. I might regret that. And some of the panel members only joined about 10 minutes ago upon being asked. So it's going to be a bit of a free-for-all, but I figured we'd have some fun. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each panelist just to provide a bit of their background and share a bit of their insight into the business that they're working on as it relates, again, to life sciences, med device diagnostics, healthcare. Because many of them have had other endeavors that don't relate to that field. But again, thematically tonight, that's what we're focused on. So I'll start on my far left, and Sheri, if you could introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your business venture, just to give some background to the group, that would be great.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Sheri Tomchick, and I'm the president of 2 companies that are focusing on healthcare. The first one is Planning Healthcare Staffing Solutions, which is a human resources company that staffs long-term care facilities around the north. And then StaffStat, which is an innovative staffing tool that allows me to staff the long-term care sector, which is my primary focus with quickness, accuracy, easy, and really cheap. My staffing agency, like I mentioned, is the first in the north. We're actually the largest in the north. We're presently looking after 16 long-term care facilities with over 220 staff. So that amounts to about 75 shifts a week that we're covering all across the north. We have a philosophy of more like borrowing staff that are already employed and loaning them to this sector. And part of our vision is not taking any of these healthcare professionals right out of the system, so we don't hire part-time or full-time. We keep them on a casual basis so that the bulk of the shifts are being picked up in the community where they really need to be.
Okay, Dennis.
So my name is Dennis Reich. I'm a family doctor here in town. I'm actually a general practitioner. I've been involved since 2000 in a lot of the local walk-in clinics. Most recently opened up in the Real Canadian Superstore. And the entrepreneurial bent is both on that side, so I tend to own the clinics that I run. But I also am involved in technology ventures and entrepreneurial companies surrounding medicine. The first one was back then it involved around physicians and on-call scheduling, and basically allowing physicians to use technology to have an online or back then it wasn't called the cloud, but cloud-based scheduling, and they were able to trade shifts by themselves through technology. Most recently, also involved in some environmental stuff in terms of industrial health and safety. So using some technology to improve air quality and water quality for individuals as well.
Okay, and Tom.
My name's Tom Forte, and Don asked me to come here 10 minutes ago, otherwise I would have put on a nice shirt, but oh well. But some of you may know me from On-Track Control Systems, Fortin Discovery Lab, but I've also been building a laser company in Toronto over the last 6 or 7 years that manufactures both industrial lasers and medical lasers. And I think in the discussion it'll give a good perspective of what's the difference between a regular manufacturing company and a medical company, because there's some very specific differences between the two. So there.
That's question number 4.
Oh, sorry.
We're not there yet. Actually, I want to start with Dennis, and I want to start with Dennis because as a practicing medical professional, I think it's important for you and the audience to get a good understanding of the importance of innovation in the healthcare industry. Namely because the innovation in the healthcare industry has a pretty significant impact on human health and human life. And Dennis, I'm curious from your perspective, you know, the healthcare costs in the province in Canada are arguably unsustainable at the pace that they're going. And recently in Sudbury, there were some cuts in staffing at the hospital. And there's a bit of confusion in that sector more broadly as to, do you believe the Canadian healthcare system is one that is committed to innovation to enhance patient outcomes, or is the Canadian healthcare industry still in a bit of state of flux or maybe arguably in trouble? Is it possible that you can generalize that the culture of Canadian healthcare, are we one that makes investments in new technology, in new programs to really drive better patient outcomes, or do you think we're lagging on a global scale?
Well, it's interesting, the basic premise that costs continue to rise, is true in Canada and every other, industrialized nation. So it's not. I don't think anybody would ever question, is it? And everyone's asking, is this a sustainable model? From the U.S. style system to the Canadian system to the U.K. model, where you got more of a split, and utilizing technology will definitely will bring efficiencies to the system. I think ultimately it's even more fundamental than that, though. It's where are societies spending money in terms of allocation of funds. Healthcare is not something that is fancy in the financial sectors. It doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It's basically a spend type of picture. And with everyone getting older, it's going to continue to kind of require a lot more funding. So I think the region, it matters more where you're talking about. And in Canada in particular, I don't think that we've invested enough in technology. And I do encourage anyone out there who's involved in any sense in the industry to really, if you feel you've got an idea or something that would help save money and kind of help patient care, some of the things that you're doing, stay with it, because ultimately, in my experience, and I don't know if you would agree, but you sometimes feel like you're fighting a losing battle, like people aren't listening to really good solutions, and the institutions that have been created around healthcare are monolithic, they're silos, and they don't open up and take on new technologies very readily. What it takes to invest in healthcare and to create innovative companies in healthcare is a lot of patience, a lot of tenacity, and just that stick-to-itiveness that entrepreneurs really have, but don't lose faith, that's the key.
So Sheri, I'll segue to you. As a startup tech entrepreneurial venture, as well as a staffing healthcare venture, the challenges that you had working with the healthcare buyers or the customers that you're working with, can you talk about that sales cycle and saying, here's demonstrable value, it will save you money, enhance productivity, and ultimately enhance patient outcomes? How can you walk through how the buying cycle actually worked?
Well, the buying cycle for staffing, first of all, being the first healthcare staffing agency from the north, there was definitely some challenges. We had to pave a lot of roads and get past that idea that we're the enemy, that we're in there and we're trying to take jobs, and it started with meeting with unions first of all to let them know what it is that we were trying to do. I find that 4 years in now that there's some really great partners that I have out there that are really focused on being proactive, but some of the people that I'm dealing with are still reactive, so it's not about forward thinking. My software that I developed to help me with my own staffing, we've learned, well, serendipitously, that it can really benefit the healthcare sector as well. And even though that has been a tremendously long sales cycle, like nothing I ever anticipated, the feedback has been 100% good, and the excitement about the product has been pretty exciting. So again, even though I said it takes a long time to get to the sale, we're slowly making our way up there, and that is an innovation that people are accepting. And I think because we've been able to, through some analytics and communicating with some really interesting people that are really connected to saving money, nail the pain points, express what they are, and really get people to understand what it is that we're trying to do.
So one of the questions, and I'll defer this one to Tom next, is once you're down the development path of a new technology or a new platform, it's critically important across all industries to engage the right stakeholders, prospective buyers, prospective users of the technology. And Tom, with the laser technology, very sophisticated, complex technology, Can you talk about the development cycle in terms of validating there's a market need, getting the right stakeholders to validate that this is a problem that will actually solve that cost effectively, adhering to the regulatory framework in the healthcare world, and ultimately getting that product to market in the healthcare field? Can you share the experiences with the laser company in terms of the duration that it took, the amount of investment, and some of the key stages in that advanced manufacturing process to get that product to market?
Yeah, I can basically talk about the process of bringing a product to market. I wasn't really involved in validating whether, the value of the lasers in the ways that they're being used. But I was basically involved with actually, the design of the product. And like any product, if you design anything, most things have electronics in them, so we'll assume it's an electronic product. First of all, you have to design, determine what you're going to do. So you can do some paperwork, do some design. They can do prototyping and validation of the design. And then you move on to making a commercially viable version of the product. And then you go to the two types of testing that are required for any commercial product that has electronics in it, and that is EMC, making sure it doesn't produce RF that's going to interfere with things that are around us. It's not susceptible to ESD and that sort of things like your FCC, CE, and those sorts of things. And then also safety, making sure that the device isn't going to harm anyone or electrocute them, start a fire, those sorts of things. And with a regular commercial product, that's pretty much, you're at the end of the line there, then you just go to market. With the medical products, then we're basically adding on a bunch of extra steps, including things like clinical trials. First, we have to prove that the device is safe for you, safe for use with humans in the method that we're going to use it. And the rules vary widely across the world as far as how clinical trials are done. For example, in North America, clinical trials are overseen mostly by FDA in the U.S. Well, they're the ones who do the final acceptance of it. But clinical, there's a lot of onerous steps to take to actually get to the point where you're going to actually use we're going to use the lasers on a human. Whereas in Germany, for example, it's 100% up to the doctor. So it's a much shorter path to actually getting to starting the clinical trials. And then once you have the clinical trials, then you have to go through, once you have your reports and your data about how things went and so on, you submit to the health agencies to get approval for using it actually as a medical device. And so if you look at a commercial product, and it'll take us this long to get there, then a medical product, we're adding probably 2 or 3 times the time to market for it. So Dennis was talking about what do you need to develop start a medical company and so on. But one of the big things you need is money, because it takes a long time to get to market. Yeah.
So the money theme will definitely come back through this. But Dennis, knowing your background, you, much like everyone in the audience here, probably have new ideas every week of products to pursue because you see a problem and you want to solve it. And then sometimes you spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money to try that one, then you might pivot and say, nope, then you want to try this one, nope. Can you talk about, again, knowing your background of having a flurry of different ideas, and some you take far, others you don't. Can you talk through from your personal experience? And I think it's relevant to this class because everyone gets new ideas, they make new networks, and they get all these different opportunities. How do you, what lens do you look through to say, that's the one that I'm willing to spend the time, the money, the effort to go for?
So I think one of the key things, I can't remember who it was, I was watching a little bit of background on entrepreneurialism in general, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this in the past, and it's about finding something, find that pain point, finding that solution to a problem that you've identified. But more importantly is finding somebody who's willing to pay you for that, right? So you can have the best solution to something that really nobody would pay $1 for. And that's an issue that sometimes entrepreneurs can get into, is they think something's a really great idea and they'll take it down a path 2 or 3 months, even longer in some cases, and spend a little bit of their own money and really believe in it, because that's half of the battle, right? So like entrepreneurialism is about tenacity and getting in there and spending a bit of your money and getting your hands dirty. But before you get too far, you got to make sure you validate that market and that there's somebody out there willing to pay you for it. So I get probably 100 ideas a day, and it's a challenge. And I have gone down a number of the paths, and literally I've got some on my back burner that I wish I could get to. But inevitably, it's when you get to that stage that you sense that yes, there is somebody out there, and everybody you seem to talk to seems to give you that kind of that nod or that kind of that positive reaction that you're looking for, that yeah, you know, this is definitely something that the industry needs. And then it drives you to that next level and keeps you motivated and keeps you going. As soon as you feel that, you know, something's not going, and it's amazing how it does seem to have its own energy at some point. So when you're in that beautiful Goldilocks zone in terms of an entrepreneur, it's a very good feeling.
So Sheri, building on that theme, your initial, I guess, product to market was Plan A healthcare staffing. You saw an opportunity to solve a problem by, you know, filling last-minute shifts with your whole portfolio of workers. But can you share the experience that you started down this path, and then there was an opportunity for a technology solution in which you created a separate entity, you put in a separate CEO to run this technology company. Can you talk through the process of which you had that moment where you were going down this path and then some opportunity to create a separate vehicle or a separate company that's arguably a technology company? Can you walk through that process? How did that happen? And what does the outlook look like for that company versus the one that you initially started?
Well, when my first company, Plan A Healthcare, started to take off, it got pretty busy pretty fast, and initially it was very homegrown. It was right out of my home, and we were making phone calls daily trying to fill shift requests, and it just kind of hit me one day that there's got to definitely be a better way to do this. And I started to look through the internet and do some research to see if I could find something. I had an idea. I found similar scheduling type software out there, but what I wanted to do exactly I couldn't find. So what I did was I spoke with a software developing company to see if they could bring my idea to life, which they did, and it worked beautifully for us. We were using it in our company for a couple of years, and people would say to me all the time, you need to bring this to the healthcare market, you need to bring it to the healthcare market, and I'd say, like, I'm not doing software, but it just happened. It just kind of clicked in my head one day how we were going to make it work. And so I did take the girl that was helping me run Plan A and turn her sort of into the CEO, but I'm right there beside her. I'm pretty much the first point of contact. I'm making the connections out there. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
It's more along the decision to pursue that as a separate entity,
Okay.
put in a separate leader to run that company, and the experience to get to that point. And I think you've shared that fairly well.
Okay, good. Sorry.
So now I'll go to Tom. I'll go to you. One of the themes that we talk about in Entrepreneurship 101 is around the importance of intellectual property. And we had a lawyer from a firm in Toronto come in talking about patents versus trademarks versus trade secrets. For some of the tech startups, there's usually advice to say if you're building something that's kind of a speed to market play, don't stress too much about getting a patent. Don't stress too much about hiding the trade secret. Just go get into market and try to win on brand and marketing and customers. But in the medical device and the healthcare field, it's usually very different. And I'm wondering if you can share, again, the experiences that you have, the intellectual property strategy that when you're going into a startup in the medical device, medical diagnostic field, maybe that isn't the best way of looking at it, just to go for it.
Yeah, it's totally different if you're developing a product and it's a speed to market thing. I'm a big fan of never mind the patent, just get it to market and be first to market and just run with it. Patents take time and cost quite a bit of money, and another thing you do when you do a patent is you're disclosing your invention. Whereas if you just go to market, you can keep your cards close to your hand. So if you register your device and patent it and so on, you're disclosing it. Maybe someone's going to work around doing it a little bit differently. So when you have a patent, you have an idea about how to do something, but there can be many different methods to do it. And someone may figure out another method that gets around the patent. So the whole patent thing, it's very different in the medical field. In the medical field, you basically have a lot of large players where a certain technological innovation can give you a really big advantage. And so there's basically two ways to approach it. And now when you're developing something that's innovative, you either patent it, and then that has the problem of disclosing it, but offers you some protection. You have a 2 or 3 year runway where it's going to take someone time to copy it or figure something out and that sort of thing. The other option is not to do nothing, but to publish it. And when you publish it, when you publish something, you're publishing it so other people can't patent it. And when you patent something, you're basically putting out there what it is so other people can't copy it. So it's a little different strategy whether you're going to, patent or publish something. With the lasers, we had a particular technology we developed to solve the first pulse suppression problem with lasers that was really innovative and unique, and we ended up patenting it, and it worked out well because we ended up getting a license deal with it, so we licensed another company to actually manufacture it. And now we're working on another technology that basically for automatic focus of the laser using sound, and I'm still up in the air as whether we're going to patent or publish. I won't say which way I'm leaning right now, but the thing is for the company itself, we don't really, we want to use the technology, the automatic focus technology in the medical laser, and we're not that, it's not a high priority to actually sell and market the technology for other people's lasers. So it may just be a patent thing to protect us to make sure no one can go down the road, because it's really a secondary part of the function of the laser. The magic is in the wavelength, the pulsing, and targeting the bonds between water molecules and other things and so on. So it's a very different game in the medical field. But one thing you notice when you start looking at medical device manufacturers, there's so many patents, and even myself, I also have OnTrack, which we make data acquisition devices, which hook up to the USB port, and we have relays to turn things on and off. Well, Honeywell has a patent on that, and I just can't believe what is patented out there.
To follow up with that is basically if you do end up kind of stepping on someone's toes that has something patented, typically they'll just ask for like kind of a royalty or some payment. So it's not like your business goes out of existence. The other thing is, for example, we have another company called SilverThink that does medical devices as well. In the clinics, believe it or not, when you have your vaccines and they give you your whatever shingle shots or whatever it is you're getting, the temperatures that fridge has to stay at is very clean and has to be measured twice daily by the Health Canada. And believe it or not, they still do that manually. They take a look at the thermometer and they write it down in a book. So we're actually building a thermometer that actually just connects to the web and monitors temperatures. And one of the questions, because we went to get some help from NRC and different bodies, and they said, well, are you patenting this? And you can't patent a thermometer, you know what I mean? And you can't patent the connection to the web or any part of that. The motivation is to get in there and get your product made as quickly as possible, get it to market, and something like that is time-saving and benefit for the vaccine storage and making sure it doesn't go bad, and it's very timely as well now with all the vaccine storage going on. So I would concur with Tom that patenting is not your last thought, but shouldn't be one of your first thoughts.
Yeah, and a lot of people get patents that are not defendable. There's a whole process once you get a patent that it's constantly being reviewed by looking at other patents that are out there and so on. And whether or not just because you have a patent doesn't mean you have the exclusive rights to use it. In theory, you do. But a lot of patents, they can be challenged. And there are lots of cases of companies, especially in the States, where medical companies challenge each other's patents, and some have to pay, some don't, that sort of thing. But unless you're developing a pretty special technology that gives you a pretty significant edge over everyone else, I wouldn't patent. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah. What I want to do now is kind of change a bit of the discussion, and I want to talk about, and Dennis, I'll start with you. I want to talk about the importance of partnerships. And one of the common threads throughout the class, throughout the course rather, is, and not to be cliche, but people arguably are the most important part of your startup. You got to get the right people on the right bus and then go the right direction. Inherent to that is maybe outside of your employees, partners that are going to get you there. I'm wondering if you can either share and call it lessons learned, kind of watch outs or things that as these individuals embark on creating their business, getting that all important first customer, do you have any shared experiences or lessons learned around when finding partners to work with? These are the things that you absolutely adamantly have to think about, because at an early stage, if you partner with the wrong customer, the wrong supplier, the wrong consultant, the wrong accountant, wrong whomever, is there anything that you can share from your experience of, hey, this is what happened to me, so beware?
that's been in business for long enough has the stories that they think about where things went wrong with partners or business dealings. So, one of the things I'd say is we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, and when you go out and partner with somebody, make sure that they complement where you don't necessarily have strengths. And we're going to all be Tom Fortins who can build a house from the foundation all the way to the last brick on the chimney. Yeah, well, that's you. So, but I'm a big proponent of partnerships and making sure that you have a good team around you. But one of the things that I would recommend is that you make sure that when you start that company up and you're in the early stages, that you set roles and that you define exactly what each individual is expected to bring to the table, what each individual will do moving forward. Because one of the things that happens over time is that things are forgotten. Discussions you had early on, all of a sudden, one of your partners decides that he doesn't want to get involved in that area that he was a big, strong component of. And then that leads to conflict and you end up with problems. So make sure that you have that and write it down. Make sure you get it on paper. Obviously, good paper will make good friends in that regard. So make sure that you really spend the time laying down that good foundation, if you use the analogy of the house again. Choose people that you get along with and choose people and make sure that the rules are defined.
By partners, you're talking about people who would share equity in the company? Is that what you're...
Yeah. Equity partners, investors, customer partners that give you feedback on developing your products, suppliers that give you things outside of just I was going to ask about just the employees later, but the kind of the other individuals.
Yeah, when you start off, I've seen a lot of fellows start off, particularly with a laser company even, but several other ones, where you get starting off early and it seems pretty easy for some people for some reason to give away equity for people to help them and so on. And if you're developing a medical product, it's a long road before you're going to have income, a very long road. And if you start giving away equity too much at the start, whether it's 5% for this or that or whatever, it becomes huge down the road. Like I always tell everyone that, if you're going to give up equity, your selling part, think of it, would you sell your children? If you're not going to sell your children, why would you give up your equity? Because that's your life. That's what, hopefully it's your life and what you're dedicated to do and so on. But just don't undervalue your equity. If you're going to partner with someone and it's 50-50 and they're going to work side by side and you're both going to, that's fine, great. What I see a lot of is people who have, two guys start out, there's always two guys, or it could be two girls, I suppose, 50-50, and then, we're going to give 10%, this person's going to do that, and then we're going to hire a new person, they're going to manage the company, be the CEO, they're going to get 3%, and blah, 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 blah. Before you know it, they're minority shareholders. And there's other ways to do things, and just be mindful that you think about 1% of your equity when you start. What is it going to be worth if you're successful down the road, and how much are you going to have to pay to get that 1% back? And also one of the things, the most important thing when you get going, as you get on with your business is having freedom to make decisions, freedom to to be, about the business and about your life, when you're going to work, what you're going to do, the direction the company's going to go. And when you give up equity, you're giving up all that, and that's something you don't want to do.
So Sheri, I'm going to ask you the continuance of that question, and then I'm going to ask you about hiring actual employees of the company. But one of the things that I find fascinating about what you've achieved with your venture is the engagement of prospective customers to help you actually design, be it on staff side or plan a better product for your companies that you can repurpose and sell to others. And I'm wondering, how did you establish a relationship with prospective customers to involve them in the product design stage, again, be it on staff side or plan A, using that knowledge that they arguably are paying for, and then resell it to a bunch of others that coincidentally had the same issue? How did you build that relationship to get them to help you design it so effectively and efficiently?
Well, something you said earlier, it's about the people. It's not about the software. It's not about the product we're putting out. And when I first started my business, I learned pretty quickly that I can't be the expert at everything. I know where my passions are. It's really in the healthcare part. And as soon as I let myself be vulnerable, it kind of opened up my creativity. It let people see that I was a real person with real ideas for real social problems and solutions. And I think as soon as I kind of let my guard down and let people know that it was just me out of Sudbury, just looking for some ideas and looking for someone to participate in, that it kind of all came together. So really it was just not being shy about it and admitting when I made mistakes and getting my head out of the sand about stuff that I thought I had to know, but I didn't really need to know. I don't need to know how to write code to have a great software company.
Okay, so outside of that part, you've hired employees. Talk about the process of ensuring you get it right, because when you're small, if one person's rowing in the wrong direction, the boat just kind of sits in purgatory. So can you talk about, for those in this room that are thinking about making their first hire, be it an equity hire or just a straight employment hire, talk about the importance of that and the lens that you did, and did you involve other people to help in the interview? Did you go with personal friends? How did you build the team that you have today?
That's a great question for us, because we call ourselves the A-team. We're a bit of the dream team in the office. We're 5 people working out of my office now, and everybody fits. So again, just kind of like what Dennis said, it's about matching people's strengths to my weaknesses and vice versa. Really, really, really effective communication right off the hop. Now we've hired a bad fit before, 2 of them in fact, and recognizing that right away and terminating that relationship quickly, just not letting it go on, knowing that the bad relationships don't bring us anywhere. But right now, if you spent a day in our office, I think you'd be impressed with the energy we have there. And again, it's communication. You know, we start every Monday morning with our powwow and talk about what's going to happen this week. On Wednesday, we talk about where are we this week. On Friday, we round up the week. So everybody's job, whether or not you're the secretary or you're the recruiter or you're the CEO of StaffStat, every person's job is so vitally important to make sure that things in my organization run smoothly. And I make sure that they know that job, you might be the secretary to you, but to me, you're everything in the front of the house. So it's just, I guess, really valuing what the work that they're doing, but reminding them that it's purposeful to our entire vision.
Okay, Dennis, you've hired a lot of people for your various companies over the years. The importance of getting it right is obvious. How do you ensure that you get the right people, or at least minimize the number of bad hires, if you will? Because again, at the beginning, it's so critical. Do you have a secret recipe that's worked more often than not?
I do go by a certain little rule that I haven't had to use too often, but I do go to it when I'm struggling. Is it the right person? Is it not the right person? It's basically just, you know, imagine yourself a scenario in your head where that person walks into your office or talks to you over lunch or something like that and says, you know what, Dennis, I found another job. So, you know, if I want to jump off a cliff because I'm distraught because this person has left, I clearly have to either pay this person more and make sure they understand how important they are to the organization. If I'm like dancing a jig, that person has to leave. In other words, it's a very clear scenario where, you know, you're making something work that shouldn't be. And somewhere in between, obviously, you can set that line of where you're going to say that person's not going to work. So a lot of the times, you want to find those people that you really feel, gosh, this person is such a valuable contributor to the company. I would never want them to leave. And in my career over many, many companies, I can say that's absolutely true. I do have to say, though, that, you know, hats off to one of the people that I do tend to hire is someone who's really good at hiring. That way, you know, you can focus on the bigger picture and work on the company instead of in the company. So, you know, a colleague of mine who happens to be here tonight, his wife is a really key component in my life, in my business, because she does a lot of the HR management. So again, it's not because I'm not good at that, but there are people that are better and can spend that time, and I can focus on other things. So that comes back to what you were saying, is that you know, you want to basically focus on what you're good at, and the team can gel that way.
Your model of ensuring you get the right people on the bus.
It's about character.
You know, and most of the people I've hired are not people who brought applications or anything. They're just people I've encountered in my life. And when I meet someone who has the right character, they're honest, they're hardworking. You know, like the person who runs OnTrack, she was a waitress. I used to go for lunch at Pat and Mario's on LaSalle years ago, and she was just a nice, honest, bubbly, hardworking. And I just said, "Hey, do you want to run a company?" And you know, she was out of high school, and now she's a controller doing a great job. I was mountain biking in Killarney all day today. It's awesome. But it's all about character. Like, you know, you think you need someone with certain experience and so on. Well, yeah, you gotta make sure the experience is there, but the most important thing is just character, honesty, work ethic, and those sorts of things. And
so if you know any waitresses out there looking for work, make sure he likes Asian food.
Thai food,
Thai food, there you go.
Yeah, well, it's a resonant topic that, you know, when you find the right person, especially at this stage, treat it as a needle in the haystack. They are hard to come by, and when you find the right person with the right character, I think that's a great example of just saying, we'll invest in them, we'll give them the right tools and opportunities to really excel, and that's a great example. Capital. We've mentioned money a few times already on the panel, and one of the themes that is a bit of a balance that we talk about in the program is someone's got a great idea, they're just getting started with their business, but they need you know, some capital to get it going. And if they go to, you know, the angel community or something like that, and the equity community more broadly, and they don't get the money, well then maybe the idea is not a good one. And some people get very discouraged on that. I guess the question that I want to ask, and Dennis, I'll start with you. You're two people, you have an idea, you're going through the product development phase. One of the streams is collectively take your 2 credit cards, max out, go for it. If it fails, just go get a day job and pay it off. And doing that because sometimes people get caught up in this whole idea that you need to raise money, you need to have equity partners, especially with tech startups. I'm curious for the advice, to give some advice to these individuals who are getting started. Should they be really focused on, hey, you need to potentially get some equity partners out of the gate, or arguably, would you suggest max out your credit cards to really put your money where your mouth is and go for it? What's your perspective on the importance of raising capital out of the gate, and what steps do you do to determine what kind of money you should be going after? Is it debt? Is it credit card? Is it equity? Is it looking for government grants? Any insight that you can share from some of your early stage companies all the way through to some of more your mature companies?
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting topic because one of the things that, as we move from topic to topic that you're bringing up, it seems as though that's the all-important topic, and money is a big one. But in the end, I think what it is about balance, right? Making sure that you're not overextending yourself personally, because, you know, if you're putting your house mortgage on the line, you're maxing out your credit cards, and there's no revenue, but you believe in the idea tremendously, you can be, you know, you can be dead right? So you run out of steam, and you basically bankrupted yourself. So you've got to have a little bit of balance in there, and make sure that, you know, if you've got an idea early on, and you feel that the revenue is just around the corner, you've kind of gone through that initial stage, you've made a little product, and you're trying to get out there to sell it, and you just don't have enough money to make more of it, and you've only got 2 or 3 of the prototypes or something like that, you know, then maybe go to friends and family. Maybe talk to, you know, come here, and there's lots of people here willing to help. Government is there to help, especially these days with, you know, the global economy being the way it is. They're really looking to the young people to really, and people that are, you know, coming from other industries to say, let's make some new products, let's get some new industry going, let's get some people working and generating their own revenues. So I think the key is it's about balance. A little bit of your own personal equity is always important. Friends and family, government, and then, you know, the venture capitalist, the whole big equity play is important, but you've got to make sure you've got your story tight. You know, if you go, a lot of people that have a lot of money have gotten that money because they've made a lot of the right decisions and learned a lot, and sometimes you got to go through the mill a few times to kind of, oops, okay, I screwed up there and I screwed up there, and learn from it. Any successful kind of person out there will gladly tell you the 3 or 4 or 5 failures. You know, was it Colonel Sanders went bankrupt 19 times before he came across the right recipe. So it's about balance and making sure that you don't overextend too early.
So Sheri, can you share, your experiences with the startup of Plan A and some of the financial elements. Did you seek any type of startup capital? Did you credit card it out? Maybe you could just share that, how you got it going and how you view some of the different type of financial helping opportunities that might exist.
When I started Plan A, it was on my own dime, and so the startup phase, getting the marketing out there, the branding and all that stuff, came out of my savings. But once we started to see growth and I needed a little bit of more money, then we went to the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund and put an application in there. And I've heard people say, well, that's a lot of paperwork, and I totally agree it is, but it is definitely worth it because there is help out there. NORCAT has been really great with helping us bring ideas to life. So we've been rewarded or awarded some IREP funding and stuff like that a couple of times. We bootstrapped Plan A pretty much to start Staff Stat, and now we're finding that we're starting to really see even Plan A is running like a fine-oiled machine, and it has enough. Well, I won't say enough, but it's got enough to get the other company going. The really nice and unique thing for my Plan A company is that we through that company, I do believe we'll be able to create some more capital for Staff Stat. We've had some people express interest in bringing Plan A to different communities, so that is an outlet I'm looking at now, is taking that, packaging it up, and not necessarily being a gigantic franchisor, but maybe bringing it to a little further north in an area like Thunder Bay that kind of carbon copies what Sudbury has here. So we're looking at ways to get creative. One thing that I always say to my team is if no one's giving us money, then we got to do what nobody else will. So it's always about how can we market using the social media. We're very good at using social media, using emails and memes and survey monkeys to get our message out, which surprisingly really does work. We get demos for our software all the time just by sending out a strategically sent out meme that might give somebody a chuckle. We have huge contact lists.
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Tom, many of the people in this room getting ready to launch their product, participate in the Upstart competition, many of them are going to say they need money to get it going. Based on your experiences, what should they think about in terms of getting that capital, in terms of the different mechanisms, and what can you share from your experience?
Well, I'm a big organic growth fan, and it just goes back to my philosophy on life, is you have to be realistic in, just looking at life in general. You have to be realistic about the material things you want in your life, but even more importantly, more realistic about when you're going to get them. And organic growth means growing the business by starting off and trying to get the income as soon as possible and just grow slowly. Like for example, with the laser company, I think, well, geez, how are you going to start from zero, from two guys in the basement of U of T to selling medical lasers? Well, the technology we developed had applications in the industrial field, and so we developed the industrial controls to get into the industrial market because we knew we could do that a lot faster. And now the industrial market is financing the medical market. So, I just look at, there are a lot of government programs around there, especially if you're starting up and so on in your first 1 or 2 years, that sort of thing. But be really careful about taking on angel investors, that sort of thing. I'm not a big fan of them. In certain cases, you need them and so on. But I see, like, this Dragon's Den thing, like I saw, there's one local manufacturer making those lunch pails, and here's a long-running business going to these fellas, asking for $300,000, whatever, and giving up equity in their company for it. You're solving a short-term problem with a long-term problem. Of now someone else owns a significant part of your business and so on. Organic growth is the way to go. It's like, what are your goals in life? Is it a big pile of money or freedom? I know those things are kind of the same, but wouldn't you like to have the freedom while you're getting the big pile of money? You got everyone's going to live a long time, cross our fingers. And it's not about getting there and having the company and making millions of dollars. You got to make the trip a lot of fun, and to do that, well, the less people telling you what to do, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. Yep. staff stat, they've really liked the product so much, and it was at the end of their year they had a little bit of more budget too. So we got creative, and they both paid for a full year in advance, which was nice instead of us having that monthly, because it is a monthly charge. So we were able to get some chunks of change if we just drop the price a little bit. So you can get creative to bring in money quicker, and it's mutually beneficial for me and for those clients to do that. Is really helpful.
So I think I'd add to that as well, in that you know, there is other models out there that you know, I'm a bit more of a serial entrepreneur. I like to make something, sell it, move to the next thing, sell it, and I usually have 4 or 5 things on the go. So if something can scale, and you know, Tom and I often get into discussions about, like, you know, his company could be 100 times bigger, but he's basically saying, no, this is my baby. Exactly, exactly. But there are people out there who would say, hey, take a bit of money and grow it really fast and become a global, like you already sell globally, but you could be bigger. And I'm not saying that to just you, but to people in general. If you do take money at the right time when you're ready to scale big, it could really be the right time.
I'm not saying, you know, avoid, there's just a time and a place for angel investors and for equity investments.
Absolutely.
And it's not as frequent as you might think.
So, you know, the question is a loaded one, and what you're speaking to is Canada Health Infoway, which spent $2.1 billion and continues to spend a lot of money. That's federally. Provincially, the numbers will stagger you as well. I've been involved in electronic medical records and following their progress for the last 15 years, ever since I graduated. And there's a couple of reasons. One is that healthcare is complex. The number of stakeholders and the number of people involved in healthcare, and the desire for government to maintain a level of privacy that exceeds you know, banking. Why can I transfer $1,000 from one bank to another with a click of a pen, but I can't order a prescription via computer? It makes no logical sense, but for those 2 reasons, it's very, very difficult. The other thing is the users themselves. You mentioned that physicians tend not to want to use it because they say it slows them down. I've likened it, I've kind of created almost a double bubble chart, where it's basically you've got physician usage, and there's this little bump that the doctors have to get over to kind of realize that in fact it would make them more efficient. And that is the step in which, you know, you stop just kind of talking to the patient in front of them and a little piece of paper, scribble something down and move on. That data that you're entering does take a bit more time, but once it's in there, next time the patient comes in, you know their prescriptions, you can just click a button and move forward, because you can still use technology within a certain silo. There's a bigger bubble coming, and that bigger bubble is going to be altering to the healthcare sector, where really the efficiencies are going to come in, and sadly, manpower is going to suffer. In that second bubble is going to be when physicians start to realize, like, because now we're starting to really get adoption. The adoption is really picking up because the software is starting to become more mature, and because it's starting to get easier to use. But also, as the physicians start to use it now, the next bubble is going to be when they realize that the computers are starting to make the decisions for them, and that algorithms are really taking over, and the physicians, well, wait a second, I'm helping make this technology better that's eventually going to replace me. You know, the Watson type of computer system. I'm talking, you know, maybe 15, 20 years down the road, but I think it will be the next hurdle to get over.
To the panel, on behalf of the Entrepreneurship 101 class, we'd really like to thank you for your time and sharing your insights tonight. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.